Hello, welcome to the first edition of Beyond the Box Score. I'm Treyvon Hastings. With me is my co-host Joey Korzanowski. We took a short, somewhat long hiatus from the podcasting realm, but we're back. We're going to provide some, hopefully, weekly content for you guys. Joey, how are you doing?
Doing good. Glad to be here. It's definitely good to get started. Like you said, a little hiatus. We definitely took some time off. We used to be pretty busy with it, but times have changed. We're back with it now. Definitely excited to pump out some content.
100%. And we're going to get started in the NFL, where we got a couple topics we want to talk about, but we're going to get things going discussing the Super Bowl rematch that everybody was excited for, Eagles Chiefs. Joey, let me hear your thoughts.
Yeah, this was pretty straightforward. The Eagles really just dominated this game. They led for just about 58 minutes of the game. I think the Chiefs took the lead a little bit towards the end of the first half, and the Eagles got it back right away in the beginning of the second half. So, the Eagles are now 17-1 in their last 18 games, and they just simply have the winning formula. Pretty much every one of these games is the same. Jalen Hurts does exactly what he needs to do to win. They give it to Saquon Barkley, and the O line does its job. The defense has been great all around. It's just quite literally the winning formula. They have it. It works, and very tough to stop.
Yeah, and on top of that, Jalen Hurts 16-0 in his last 16 starts. And when the Eagles have A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts on the field at the same time, they have an astronomical record. So just having both of those two guys on the field is what they need to be successful. And obviously, they have a great run game. The whole media this week so far has been talking about the tush push this, the tush push that. But Chiefs had their opportunities. They missed field goal. They went for it in their own territory on fourth down and failed. Travis Kelce dropped a touchdown to take the lead late. So at the end of the day, the Eagles did more to win. And the reality is, during this stretch of play the Eagles have had over the now 2 seasons, they've only had 8 giveaways and they've had 39 takeaways. So when you're plus 31 in one of the most important facets of the game, you're gonna win games, and that's just the sad reality for a lot of fans. Now, me, I'm an Eagles fan. It's not a sad reality for me, but for a lot of people, it is. It's just how it is. And I know some people are frustrated by the way the games are played, how Jalen Hurts is performing, but when when you become so perfect and elite at game managing, and for example, AJ Brown can go last week with no targets basically the whole game until the last drive, and you're still winning games. I think it just showcases how elite the Eagles truly are.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think the key here is that they can beat you in multiple ways too. You mentioned all these weapons: AJ Brown, Saquon, Jalen Hurts. Obviously, we know, but any of them can beat you. They can have AJ Brown go off. They could have Saquon Barkley do his thing, as we saw in the playoffs. Jalen Hurts could take over, kind of like he did in the Super Bowl. So the fact that they can beat you in so many ways just makes it so hard to kind of game plan for. So that's just kind of how dominant the Eagles are. But to be honest, I think a lot of people are kind of overlooking the Chiefs here. I don't want to say that people have figured the Chiefs out, but I think just kind of the stuff that they got away with, especially last year. Obviously they had a lot of close one-score games. We all know that's kind of due for regression. So I'd like to know where you're at. Are you sounding the alarm on the Chiefs just yet?
Um, I wouldn't say yet. It is the first time they've lost 3 straight games, or at least Patrick Mahomes has, if you count the Super Bowl last season. But they they're somewhat dismantled. They can't run the ball. They haven't been able to run the ball since 2 Super Bowls ago when Pacheco made a name for himself. And frankly, they don't have Rasheed Rice. In my opinion, I think they have enough weapons. Tyquan Thornton is a solid player that they got off waivers because the Patriots cut him. They've got Juju, who is for whatever reason all reliable when he's on the Chiefs, and then Hollywood Brown. And Hollywood Brown used to be this big name when he was in Baltimore. He got traded, didn't work out, and he's kind of just there. He's not, doing much. But the reality is, their passing offense has regressed to the extent it has because of Travis Kelce's lack of production. And that's just the reality. He has to find a way to get going consistently week in and week out for them to have a solid passing attack. And obviously, he's at the age and he's kind of at the point where he's hinted at it several times. It might be his last season, it might not. We don't know. We'll find out. But they have to find a way to run the ball, obviously protect Patrick Mahomes, and continue to play stout defense. And they're going to be in all their games. And at the end of the day, that championship pedigree that they have is going to probably win them enough games to still be in the playoffs, be a team you don't want to play, especially if it's at Arrowhead.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring up Travis Kelsey because even just watching some of these games, and I really noticed this last year, even during the regular season. Like, I hate using the phrase "washed," but like Travis Kelsey, he just looked like he lost a step. Like he just didn't look the same. Didn't look like he had that edge to him that he had used to have. But I noticed that in the regular season, and then everybody had just kind of said, "Oh, well, he'll turn it on in the playoffs. He's saving it for the playoffs." Travis Kelsey, he'll get going in the playoffs, and then that really didn't happen. I mean, he really didn't take over in playoffs like he has before, and now in this season, I think you're seeing a lot of the same. And I think he's so key to the Chiefs' passing game because even though they've been kind of deprived of that long ball because they don't have Tyreek Hill anymore, they relied on Travis Kelsey a lot in the middle of the field, kind of in the check down game as an extension of the run game. And now he's not even really doing that. He can't really fill that role for you.
Yeah, and I would also add that I mean, he what he's there for is obvious. Exploit mismatches. Safeties can't necessarily cover him because he's as fast and obviously bigger than most of them. You can't put a corner on him for the same reasons, and then when he's on a linebacker, he's just going to outrun him. So he's one of the toughest matchups to scheme for in the entire NFL, especially when you have the connection that Kelsey and Mahomes have developed over the years. They can non-verbally kind of work their way through a route concept or whatever the case may be, whether it's man or zone. They kind of just know where they're going to be. So I wouldn't say a ton of concern for them yet. I think there's a lot of teams I would still take them over if we're talking from a power rankings perspective, but they definitely are shooting themselves in the foot more than we're accustomed to, and we'll see. I mean, they'll probably be the leading contender in their division still, although I'm really high on the Chargers right now. So
The,
they
the
really
Chargers look really good too. Obviously, they already beat the Chiefs in Week 1, but yeah, no, the Chargers I think are for real.
yeah, I think they're definitely a top 10 team for sure. And they're a team to watch because Harbaugh, year two, Herbert, they're opening up the passing game, which they kept very on the low just last season. Justin Herbert's one of the probably top three most talented passers in the entire league, and I truly feel that way. And he's putting that on display. He's protecting the football. He's still making big throws, though. And ultimately, once they get that run game going with Amari Hampton and Najee Harris, they're going to be the team to watch out for because their defense is fast. They fly to the football and they generate turnovers.
And that very well could be all of those reasons why they beat the Chiefs in the AFC West this year for the first time in forever. It feels like just because the Chiefs have dominated that division for so long, even winning the division last year. Remember they blocked that field goal against Denver late in the season. Those are the kind of games that they won last year. And I like that you mentioned power rankings because I did have mine. I pulled mine up from last week. I had the Chiefs at 7 and the Chargers at 5. I haven't put an official list together for this week, but yeah, I think the Chargers would stay there, but the Chiefs might have to get knocked down. And I really can't remember the last time they've been outside of the top 10 of a consensus power rankings.
Yeah, and that's something I'd have to do too is sit down and formulate those power rankings. That might be something we do on our next episode, but
Hmm.
I think they're still in that, 8 to 12 ish kind of category. There's just not a lot of teams that have been very flashy. I mean, one of the more surprising teams has been the Colts, and I wouldn't say I would take the Colts over the Chiefs. So I guess it just depends. But moving forward into the next topic we want to discuss. While the fortunes for the Eagles were good and Chargers were good, can't say that for the Chiefs, and we definitely can't say that for J.J. McCarthy and the Minnesota Vikings. He struggled once again, second career start on Sunday Night Football this time against the Falcons. He also suffered a high ankle sprain, so he'll be out 2 to 4 weeks roughly. And in addition to that, more news that just happened recently, but Aaron Jones will also be on the IR with a hamstring injury, missing 4 weeks minimum. So they're going to go to Carson Wentz. They're going to go to Jordan Mason. Foley now as the bell cow back, so fantasy owners will be happy about that. But how do you feel JJ has been playing? How do you think the injury will impact them? That includes Wentz stepping up into that passing attack. And where do you see the Vikings going this season?
So start off with JJ McCarthy. So I personally, I don't think you were either, but so neither of us were that high on him coming out of college. He was an intriguing prospect, but I thought he didn't have to do a ton in college. He was just on such a good team, but he did what he had to do. He played winning football, which absolutely nothing wrong with that. So I just didn't know how much that would translate into the NFL, but I thought he landed in a great situation here with the Vikings. We're both huge fans of Kevin O'Connell. We both think he's a great play caller. We saw what he did with Sam Darnold last year, so I was excited to see what he did with J.J. McCarthy this year, with it being essentially his rookie season. But he really only got one good quarter out of him in Chicago. Granted, it led to a win, which by all means is the most important thing. But then this week, it just felt like throughout the game, you were kind of waiting for him to turn it on in the second half, fourth quarter, like he did in week one, and you just kind of never happened. I think the Falcons had a great game plan for him. They really put a lot of pressure on him. But yeah, JJ having three turnovers, certainly not what you want to see. I think a lot of his struggles kind of got displayed on Sunday night, being in prime time again. And the Vikings only putting up 6 points, certainly not ideal. But now with Wentz coming in, I think this is really interesting because obviously Carson Wentz is a more experienced guy. He's won games before, but the last time we saw him was what, last year in Denver for the Chiefs, and they lost 38-0. I think he was playing with a lot of their backups, but yeah. So I mean, we haven't really seen the best of Carson Wentz the last time we saw him.
Yeah, and Wentz has now been on 6 teams in each of the last 6 seasons. Kind of a slept on thing that not a lot of people who would more casually follow the sport would know. But 2020 he was on the Eagles, and then he went to the Commanders and the Colts, and all that, the Rams, even Chiefs, now the Vikings. So he's been around a little bit. He started a lot of games for a lot of teams, and I mean he is a veteran quarterback. He obviously, I think pre Jadavian Clowney hit and ACL tear, was a top 5 quarterback in the league. He was going to win an MVP. I still think he should have won that MVP with the injury, but that's a different conversation. So he clearly has talent. He can throw the ball. He's going to be in a good system that is going to allow him to just make the right plays and try to limit his tendencies to be a little bit more on the turnover happy side. So as long as he's able to get the football out and not hold it, I think they'll be fine. As for the running game, it wasn't great with Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. So now just having Jordan Mason, I'll be curious to see if he can kind of assert himself as the RB1 of this team. And if not, I think we'll see a heavy dosage of both of those backs when not only they come back, but when JJ McCarthy comes back.
Yeah, no, they're definitely gonna have to lean on Jordan Mason. I think he had 15 carries last week or in week one. So I mean, they've shown a confidence to be able to run the football with Jordan Mason, but he's certainly gonna have a lot of opportunities here. But I think that is another reason to raise concern is that lack of run game because I mean, obviously that would be something that Carson Wentz would want to lean on. You can get into some play action with some of that. So if they're not gonna have that, I think that's even more reason to be concerned. So yeah, this whole situation for the Vikings, it definitely has me concerned. I don't know how many games they're going to end up winning. I mean, obviously, starting off 1-1's not bad, but it really is going to come down to Carson Wentz and how much Kevin O'Connell can trust him, how much he opens up the playbook for him.
Exactly. And while the Vikings are 1-1, not a bad start. A great start for the Cincinnati Bengals, 2-0, first time since who knows when. Their last 6 seasons they were 1-11 in the first 2 weeks of the season. They've changed that. They've already won more games than all those seasons combined in the first 2 weeks. 2-0, got the big win against the Jaguars. Some of it in comeback fashion, but unfortunately Joe Burrow goes down with the detrimental toe injury. It's going to require surgery. He's going to miss approximately 3 months, which could jeopardize his entire season potentially. And we're going to get Jake Browning stepping in. He played iffy, I would say. He took some chances with the ball, some that definitely did not need to be taken, but ultimately he led him down the field, got a couple scoring drives. Bengals defense stepped up when it needed to, got a couple turnovers from the always overrated quarterback Trevor Lawrence, and they got a victory, which is I think huge for them moving forward, especially with how Browning was able to connect with Jamar Chase throwing the football.
Yeah, no, I was kind of impressed with Jake Browning, but I was impressed, but I wouldn't say surprised because we've seen this before with Jake Browning. I believe he's 4-3 as a starter, so he's had some success in the league, and this offense just doesn't seem to skip a beat with him running the operation because. For as elite as we say that Joe Burrow is, which he absolutely is, he takes his offense to the next level. But I think Jake Browning can kind of keep this offense right where it needs to be to stay afloat. But that just means they're going to have to rely a lot more on the running game and on the defense, of course.
Yeah, and I'd also like to add they weren't really able to run the ball as successfully as they would have liked to against the Jaguars. Chase Brown had, I think, 17 carries for 65 yards. So you got to be more efficient in the run game. We might even see Chase Brown closer to 25 to 30 touches moving forward just because you want to establish the short passing game, get your quarterback into a rhythm. And in order to do that, a lot of times that includes the tight ends and the backs. And luckily for the Bengals, they have depth at both of those positions. They should be fine. Now, the person I think takes the biggest hit from Browning stepping in for Joe Burrow is T. Higgins because while while Joe Burrow can feed the ball to both of those guys and do it pretty damn good, the reality is Jake Browning isn't as good as Joe Burrow, and he's not gonna as consistently get the ball to both guys. I think there's going to be a heavy emphasis of Jamar Chase short, letting him run after the catch, doing what he does with the ball in his hands. But we might not see as many deep shots down the field or contested catch opportunities for T. Higgins. So it'll be interesting to see how the Bengals try to navigate that as well. But I think there was some bright spots from their defense in these first two games to have a little bit more hope than if Joe Burrow got hurt last season, right? So I think that is one area where they can have a little bit more faith and hopefully hover around 500 before Burrow comes back.
Yeah, I think another aspect that we can look at for this is that this gives a huge opportunity to Zach Taylor, in my opinion, because everybody, wants Zach Taylor on the hot seat, thinks that Cincinnati should move on. But if he can win games with Jake Browning at the helm as opposed to Joe Burrow, I feel like that's a huge testament to Zach Taylor, just because a lot of people have been very critical of him. But if he can show that he can still win despite having your star quarterback, I feel like that says a lot.
100%. And I'm one of those, not so much having a hatred for Zach Taylor. I just don't think I think he's gifted by what's around him. I think there's a lot of coaches like that, to be honest. But in his case, there's just very evident situations where the coaching is lacking, and I think Zach Taylor definitely should keep an eye on his job, especially with the Burrow injury. If they just sink and lose almost every game, I mean, he's probably gonna get fired. Some of it won't be his fault, but it is what it is. I mean, the reality is they can't protect Burrow. He continues to get hurt. He's in this Andrew Luck category of quarterback hits and sacks, and I mean, Andrew Luck played 86 games. He had 828 QB contact hits of some sort, 21% contact percentage, 174 sacks in that time, and a 28% pressure percentage. And when you look at Joe Burrow, who's in his sixth season, only 71 games, so 15 less, 634 QB hits, 20% contact percentage, 201 sacks, and 27% pressure percentage. And for context, the all-time QB sacked record used to be Brett Favre for a really long time. I think Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady might have passed in that category. It's not a record people keep track of often, but it's over 500. And Burrow's already almost halfway there, and he's only in his sixth season.
I will say though, I think luckily for Joe Burrow, he hasn't had the sustained head injuries. I think that was a big part of why Andrew Luck didn't last was it was more the head injuries and that the severity of that. But Burrow's had a knee his rookie year. He's had a wrist, and now he's got an ankle. So, but nonetheless, I mean, these all of these things can kind of add up. The more a player ages and all of that, and we know that football players, they're more on a smaller lifespan in terms of their career. So that'll be something interesting to monitor here in the future. But no, me personally, on a scale of 1 to 10, if I had a confidence level in Jake Browning, I would probably say a 5 or a 6. So like honestly, right about like in the middle because I'm confident he can keep the operation going, but just not take it to the next level the way that Burrow can.
Exactly. I think he's one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league. I think the Bengals should feel fortunate to have him rather than some other quarterback out there. But speaking of some other quarterback out there, we're going to talk about Baker Mayfield leading the Bucks to another comeback win, this time against the Houston Texans in the first of two Monday night games that took place. I want to hear your thoughts on it. You are a Browns fan. You have been there for the whole Baker Mayfield full circle moment. And, I turned the game on, saw a fourth quarter game winning drive, and went, you know what? That's what Baker does. I did the same thing when he was in Los Angeles with the Rams. I turned on a game and he led a fourth quarter drive. I was like, wow, he just he's a gamer. He just knows when to turn it on. And he was having a great game. He kind of slowed down a little bit, but he was able to get a big win for the Bucks.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, he is a gamer in every sense of the word. And as a Browns fan, I still am a Baker Mayfield guy. I'm very happy to see Baker having success in a place, and he is the guy. And they've had a lot of success with him. But yeah, last night it was a typical Baker Mayfield win. He came out of the gate hot. I think the Buccaneers put up 14 points in the first quarter. He was throwing the ball all over the field. But as the game kind of went on, he didn't have to do a whole ton. How about Bucky Irving? He's been phenomenal this season. They absolutely pounded the rock with Bucky Irving. Even Rashad White got in there a little bit. But when Baker had to step up in the fourth quarter, he did it. The Buccaneers gave up that blocked punt. The Texans take the lead in the fourth quarter. Felt like the Texans were trying to break through all game. And then Baker Mayfield comes up clutch, 4th and 10, scrambling away, picks it up himself. He fights at the contact, jawing with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson a little bit. But no, Baker Mayfield's just the type of guy that the team rallies around. They love his energy, they love the way he plays, and he just is a great leader. So it's great to see Baker Mayfield having success. But no, certainly very happy for Baker. I liked what I saw last night. Buccaneers 2-0, which I think we were talking earlier. You said that's a pretty common thing for them.
Yeah, fifth straight season they're going to be 2-0, which is huge. They do play in probably the easiest division in football, so I think they could start 0-2 and still win the division, but that's huge. They get that stepping stone win over the rest of the division that is going to be playing catch up once again. And with that in mind, Baker had a nice game. Jake Browning had a decent game. JJ McCarthy did not, and the Eagles defense did. So, standout individual performances week one. Obviously, we got to talk about Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, this was absolutely vintage Russell Wilson, back to his Seahawk days. A lot of people said Russell Wilson's washed, and they said he didn't look good in week one, but he silenced those critics right here. 30 for 41, 450 yards, 3 touchdowns in a divisional game at Dallas. However, in overtime, game on the line, he threw a pretty bad interception, I thought. I don't know if he was trying to force it deep, but he threw it into a couple different Cowboys defenders and essentially lost them the game. But outside of that interception, damn near a flawless game from Russell Wilson.
Yeah, 30 of 41 over almost over 75% passing. He did have the 3 touchdowns. We talked about the crucial interception. Definitely don't blame him for throwing it. I mean, he had just thrown two nukes to Malik Neighbors in the fourth quarter, so I'm not gonna hate on the throw. He just extremely misexecuted it. He threw it completely off. I think he thought Neighbors might be running a post. He was running essentially a go route or corner, and it was nowhere near. So obviously, when you're playing the Cowboys and they can kick the ball once they cross the 50-yard line, game was over at that point. I mean, Dak had a decent game, a lot of just short kind of throws. Didn't have a ton of yards considering the completions, but it was an interesting game. The Giants haven't beat the Cowboys since 2011, and this was their first real close game opportunity to do that. And unfortunately, they didn't do it. But Russell Wilson might have led the league in passing yards, and he does through 2 weeks now. Jared Goff also once again destroyed the Chicago Bears, who had a little bit of a controversial, game considering the score running up and everything else. But Jared Goff, he was on his A game against the Bears.
Yeah, well over 300 yards, 5 touchdowns, 23 for 28. So, I mean, just playing efficient football, doing exactly what he needs to do to win. I know a lot of people think of Jared Goff kind of as this game manager, but really not the case. Although I do think Jared Goff is slightly limited. I think he has a certain ceiling, but No, there was a lot of conversation around the Lions after Week 1. You know, a brand new offensive coordinator. You know, people thought that this was going to be way different than Ben Johnson's offense, but yeah, this Lions offense at home is really just unstoppable. Put up 52 points, but yeah, I do want your opinion. Do you think the Lions ran up the score on the Bears? Do you think Dan Campbell just kind of rubbed it in the face of Ben Johnson?
So post game, I know we had already talked about this, but Ben Johnson got asked about, you know, did you feel he was running up the score? And he was like, well, what do you want him to do? It's 4th and goal at the 3 late in the game. Like, obviously, you could kick a field goal, but it's like, analytically speaking, and with the way the game's evolved, almost every team's going to go for it in that situation. So
Especially Dan Campbell.
yeah, I was gonna say he did that with Ben Johnson. He's now doing it without Ben Johnson. I don't really think it's a Ben Johnson thing. I think it's more of a how Dan Campbell plays thing. Obviously, the Lions and their players came in extra motivated to play Ben Johnson, but either way, the Bears just, I think the average points allowed against the Lions last 2 years is a number that I won't even say on this podcast because it's frankly disheartening as a defense to give up this many points in a 2 year span to one team.
Yeah, but I mean, this just is the Lions' offense. They have too many weapons, literally all around. They done such a great job of drafting. Huge shout out to Brad Holmes. But I mean, this has kind of been the thing with the Lions and the Bears now. And I honestly thought going into the game that the Bears might try and keep it close. You know, I know they had the tough loss at home in Week 1. You know, hitting the road, not always the easiest thing, coming off a shorter week. But yeah, I thought they would keep it kind of close. But yeah, their defense just stood no chance from the beginning.
Yeah, no chance at all. And ironically, that kind of will transition into the Jamar Chase thing because Jags kind of didn't have a defense in terms of defending Jamar Chase. Travis Hunter was on him a little bit. I know you were going to mention something about that, but we kind of talked about this already. But we'll end it with the Bengals and Jamar Chase and the game that he had against Jacksonville.
Yeah, Jamar Chase, 14 catches, 165 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, he was just completely involved. Jake Browning just completely force fed him, and I can't blame him whatsoever. I would be doing the exact same thing if I had the best receiver in the league on my team. But yeah, Jamar Chase went crazy, of course. I did see a couple of clips of him going against Travis Hunter, and he just completely worked Travis Hunter. I mean, almost like a welcome to the NFL moment. But I honestly think we're going to see more of these performances now with Jake Browning, just because you had kind of hit on it. Jake Browning was aggressive in this game, but we're probably not going to see the same kind of deep shots that we would be used to be seeing with Burrow. So this would give Jamar Chase a lot more opportunities for screens or run after the catch chances, which is exactly his game. It's what he thrives on.
Yeah, and this will be a point we kind of get into with college football. We can talk standout performances first to kind of lead into it, but Tennessee's Chris Brazell the third, or my bad, the second, had a crazy game against Georgia, but he wasn't alone. Quarterback Joey Aguilar started 16 for 16 against the Dogs. Unfortunately, as always, Tennessee fails to beat Georgia. They have not done that for now 8 straight seasons. So I want to get your thoughts on the game. I know I watched it early on, and I got to tell you that was a crazy game.
Yeah, it felt like a game that Tennessee was going to win the whole way, and Tennessee was, I believe, 3.5, 4.5 point underdogs going into the game. I thought they were going to win outright, and it felt like they were going to. You know, Joey Aguilar, 24 for 36, 371 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks. But Chris Brazell, 6 catches, 177 yards, 3 touchdowns. And I wasn't completely watching the game. I was at Kent State for their game, but I was at my brother's apartment and he had it on the TV. And the one touchdown I did end up seeing live was the one where Brazil went up over the DB and caught it and came down with it. I was like, oh my God. So yeah, Brazil, great performance. Aguilar, great performance. But it wasn't enough. I believe Kirby Smart has beaten Tennessee 8 straight times. If I believe he's 8-1 in his career against Tennessee. So he has just completely dominated Tennessee. And if Tennessee is dropping games like this that they should have won, went to overtime, because Tennessee's kicker had the chance to go for the game winner. I believe it was only in the 40-yard range, 40 something, missed it. But of course, he makes the one to start overtime, and then Georgia goes down and scores a touchdown.
Yeah, Aguilar, after that great start, he only completed 8 more passes. So he had a rather pedestrian end to the game, or last three quarters, I should say. I mean, 8 for 20 isn't very good. He got a lot of those yards on those deep shots to Brazil. 4 touchdowns. He did throw two crucial picks that gave Georgia extra possessions to get back into the game because at first, with the way Tennessee was playing, their tempo offense, fastest in the FBS per snap, 28 seconds per snap, they ended up just kind of somehow letting Georgia back in the game, and they eased up a little bit, and that's what bit them. So hopefully teams learn to stop doing that against Georgia because they are just pesky. They're going to hang around and hang around and hang around and eventually come through with the win.
Yeah, I think that is an exact testament to Kirby Smart, the way that he's ran that team and where he has that program at. They find ways to win it, man. That's why he's won multiple national championships. But yeah, kind of the way that we talked about, it was a typical Buccaneers win with Baker. I feel like this was kind of a typical Kirby Smart Georgia win.
100%. And in a not so typical way for another game, Ohio State's red zone offense was not very good against the Bobcats of Ohio. I put Ohio's red zone defense on here as a standout individual performer because they open up the game, Ohio State drives, turnover on downs at the 4. And then the next three possessions, Ohio State's kicking field goals. Once right outside the red zone, and then two in the red zone at 20 yards and 22 yards. So right there at, knocking on the door, not able to score touchdowns. And that kept Ohio in the game for about three quarters.
Yeah, it really did, and it was funny because Ohio State had no problem moving the football down the field. It was just when they got into that crucial area, they couldn't capitalize. But yeah, I was really honestly excited for this game all around because we know Ohio had beat West Virginia at home, so Ohio's one of the better teams, one of the better group of five teams, or probably the best team in the MAC, at least top two with Toledo. So I was excited to see how Parker Navarro did. I was kind of sad to see him get hurt. He was knocked out for some of that game, but he came back in the third quarter, had that run on the first play of the second half, and threw the long touchdown. So he really kept Ohio in it until Ohio State pulled away late. But yeah, I was awfully impressed with Ohio overall, but especially that red zone defense held Ohio State to multiple field goals in that first half. But Ohio was only down 10 at halftime. I mean, I that's a huge testament to them, to that program.
Yeah, I actually think from a G5 perspective, if we're talking college football playoff, Ohio should be one of the teams leading the conversation to get into the playoff. That's if they can, handle business in the MAC. The MAC's always crazy, a lot of upsets, a lot of high scoring games, and Ohio, like every other team, has fallen trap to that multiple times. So if they can find a way to just run the table in the MAC, win that conference championship game, somehow get ranked or be the highest ranked non Power 5 team or Power 4 team, I should say, thanks to Pac-12, I think they can make the playoff, and they've got a good defense. They're very well coached. They lean on that run game, and if you're a team that lacks in defending the run, they're going to chew up the clock on you, and they're going to wear you out defensively. So that's kind of their identity. We saw it against West Virginia. They were at home playing a Power 4 team. Crazy scheduling by West Virginia to begin with, but they dominated them for four quarters. So I was very curious to see how the Buckeyes would play. And the red zone offense definitely has some questions that are going to need figured out moving forward.
Yeah, and traditionally, it's well, at least in recently, it's kind of been the opposite. Ohio State's been the one that has had to shut down red zone defense. We saw it in the playoffs against Texas. We saw it in Week 1 against Texas. So that's kind of been Ohio State's thing, but to see that kind of turn back on them is interesting. And honestly, it is impressive because you think about Ohio State's offense, just so many targets in the red zone. Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, and two big bodies, Max Clare, Brandon Ennis. I mean, they can almost go to anybody that they want in any way that they want. So the fact that Ohio was able to shut that down, awfully impressive. But it's not like it would be anything new. You mentioned maybe Ohio could get ranked. Did we not see Northern Illinois ranked last year after they beat Notre Dame? I believe they got as high as like 23 or something.
They jumped in at 23 and then I believe lost that following week. So they were in there
Yeah,
for,
yeah.
but yes, it's possible. The AP poll did drop. Ohio was not ranked. I didn't expect them to be ranked. I'm curious how many votes
No.
there was, but they're going to be a team to monitor just as the season progresses, as a G5, because you never know. there isn't a team like Boise that's leaning on one player so heavily that can single handedly carry them into the playoffs. So I think this year that G5 spot is open for lots of different teams. Tulane, Ohio. I mean, there's plenty of teams.
Yeah, the group of five could always get competitive. It's just hard because they typically don't end up playing each other, so you're kind of judging them based off of the conference competition that they play, which might not fare well for the MAC, or maybe even like the Sun Belt. If one of those teams ever had a chance, I think that would definitely favor a team more like Tulane. But yeah, I think it's definitely interesting to watch. Because I think everybody was mostly high on Ohio and Toledo in the MAC. I know Ohio won it last year, so if they could repeat. But it could definitely get interesting because if one of those teams were able to get ranked, although I don't think it would happen now because you're just about done with out of conference play, so you're not going to be playing those teams that are higher up, so you can really prove yourself. But I remember Boise State had the bye last year because they won their conference. So I mean, that would be interesting to see a MAC team end up having that.
It would. I do think the strength of schedule will hurt the MAC. I think it'll hurt the Sun Belt unless you're James Madison. And honestly, the American will be the team that has the best opportunity to pull that off. But since we're talking about Big Ten, we got a couple just quick hitters here. UCLA starting 0-3. Are they cooked?
Yes, I think UCLA is cooked. It's strange, right? Because Nico Iamilava is supposed to be really good, and I feel like he has the potential to be really good. I mean, he has all the physical tools. The whole situation with Tennessee, it was so dumb. He should not have left. He had no reason to ask for more money. He honestly didn't really deserve a raise with the way he was playing. I mean, he maybe might have lived up to the money he was making at the time, but to ask for more, I thought was just completely insane. But yeah, no, UCLA, they don't have the defense. The offense isn't clicking. It's only going to get tougher as they get into Big Ten play.
Agree 100%. Leave it at that. I don't want to talk about UCLA just because they don't deserve to be talked about. But coach is already fired, so maybe things will change for him. But 3 losses
That is
to
true.
teams that aren't going to be contending for the playoffs, pretty concerning, especially when 2 of them are G5s. So
Yeah,
Clemson,
and you're losing at
they
home.
deserve to. Are they cooked?
I'm gonna say no. I'm kind of in the middle with this one. I'm gonna say no. The week one game. I know you were hosting LSU. That's tough. Uh, I think they'll be okay. I mean, look, it's Dabo Sweeney. Clemson is just too talented all around to be cooked. I think they can very easily go on a run here in the ACC, kind of like they did last year, and still come away with this thing.
I will agree solely because the Academic Coastal Conference, I don't care what their name is, that's what I call them, is weak. And they'll get in, they can, if they win out. So that should be the goal for Clemson. That should always be the goal for Clemson because if they get in, win their conference, guess what? You're playing in the playoffs. So we'll see for them. But the other situations, are you buying stock in Alabama? They've played great since that loss to Florida State, and maybe is this just a testament to how good Florida State might actually be?
I think I am buying stock on Bama. It's another interesting situation because that game, week one against Florida State, really kind of favored Florida State with the rain because Florida State wants to run the football. They want to get Tommy Castellanos on the ground. That's what they're built on. That's exactly what they did, and Bama just couldn't stop it. So it was a concerning loss at the time, but now Bama has rebounded. They've looked good. I it's hard because when you talk Bama, you think these Nick Saban teams, but Kalen DeBoer is just a completely different coach than Nick Saban. He's not that kind of hard old school coach. He has his own ways, and it's still yet to be determined if they'll truly work or not. But yeah, I like Bama to run the table here in the conference. They were my pick to win the SEC before the year. I thought Kalen DeBoer with a full offseason to recruit. I bought in on Ty Simpson. Still confident in that pick. I do think Bama can still win the conference.
100%. And, you know, adding to that, I think that they, one, have a really tough schedule. So we're going to find out. But I think to rebound the way that they have, as dominantly as they have, is sending a message to everybody else as well as their own team that they're not done. They're not down out with the count. Like, they're here. They're going to remain as hopefully a mainstay in college football. And their goal is going to be what it always is, which is win a national championship. It's just going to look differently than what it would with Nick Saban. So we kind of already talked about the Kirby Smart winning Tennessee thing, so we can brush that one to the side because we're just disappointed in Tennessee. I thought they would get the job done, and it is what it is. But we've got a couple debate topics here in the last about 5 minutes, 5 6 minutes to close this thing out. Debate topic number one: should the Browns start Joe Flacco or Dylan Gabriel?
I've gone back and forth with this. Obviously, I'm a big Browns fan for anyone who doesn't know, but so I put a TikTok out. I said the Browns should start Dylan Gabriel. I've gone back and forth with it, and the more I think about it, I think you just have to do it. Look, I know we want Flacco to start against some of these tougher teams. I know you play the Packers, and you got to go to Detroit, got to go overseas, play the Vikings. So you got three straight NFC North games. Then you got to come back and play at Pittsburgh. Look, that's really tough. I I know a lot of people think that you would be setting Dylan Gabriel up to fail in those games, but the reality is you play in the NFL. There are no easy matchups. No matter who you play is going to scheme. They're going to scheme for you. The whole game plan is going to be centered around you. You've got to go out and beat them. I mean, these guys are getting paid millions of dollars to come take your head off. I think you just got to put them out there and start them. I mean, when you think of the whole goal for the season for the Browns, it's to figure out what you have in these two rookie quarterbacks because they've got two first-round picks coming up next year that are going to be very, very valuable. So you've got to see what you have in Dylan Gabriel and Shadur Sanders, and you're not going to do that with him sitting on the bench.
I somewhat agree. I would say in the games in which the Browns are going to take, more hits at quarterback, the O line's going to struggle. Those are definitely like Flacco worthy games. I said week one, Kenny Pickett should have been the starter. I did say this. I thought it would happen. They made the trade with the Eagles, and it didn't happen. But, that's not my problem. I don't root for the Browns. I don't care at all about the Browns. And at the end of the day, if they want to start the 40-plus-year-old, send them out there because that means they just don't have the confidence in those rookies, which means they should have never drafted those rookies. I mean, it's just a multitude of things, in my opinion. I think their draft was very weird. It was interesting. You draft a quarterback, you then draft another one. You take running backs where you take them. Like, I thought selectively where they picked the players that they did, the value was just really all over the place. And I don't really know if they were supposed to take Shador. I think they might have just been told to take Shador. So that's a whole nother thing. But if you had just taken Dylan Gabriel, I didn't see the need to then also get Shador. But again, not my concern. It is the concern of Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry because Joey, are they on the hot seat?
A lot of people are going to say yes. I'm going to say no. Andrew Berry, maybe. Kevin Stefanski, no. Look, they won 3 games last year. I get that. The Browns' offense has not looked good, but I think the thing with Kevin Stefanski is he's been dealt a really bad hand. When you think about it, so he's been in Cleveland since 2020. 2020 went to the playoffs. Healthy Baker, everything was going good, business was booming, all that. 2021, Baker is injured. Now I don't know why he played. Don't know if it was his choice to play. It was a contract year. He probably felt like he needed to play and prove himself, which is fine. Whatever. He was injured and only had like 17 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. Did not play good enough. So the Browns felt like they needed to move off of him. All right, fine. They take a big swing, take a big time gamble. Didn't really pay off. 2022, you kind of punted on because Deshaun Watson had the suspension, so he didn't come back till later on in the year. You kind of punted. 2020, 2023 had 4 different quarterbacks, made the playoffs. And then last year, you kind of punted because Deshaun Watson looked terrible in the beginning of the season. And then you never really got anything going. You had DTR starting the end of the season. So in Kevin Stefanski's tenure, you've punted on the Baker injury year, Deshaun Watson suspension, and then last year, the Deshaun Watson just injury, we'll call it. So you've now punted on 3 out of his 5 years here. I just don't think it's fair to evaluate him based on bad moves made by the GM and the owner. So, but that's the thing then. So Andrew Berry is probably much more on the hot seat than Stefanski would be because Andrew Berry is the one that kind of has to take all the heat for these moves.
I would argue that it'll either be both or it'll be none, just because the Browns, I feel like they're kind of just content with where they are, at least from the Haslam's perspective. The new stadium's getting made. Like, there's a lot going on with the Browns that that's behind the scenes, and frankly, I don't think they're willing to even go in. I mean, maybe they want to go into that with new tenureship. I don't know. Maybe they want to have a new front office look. Maybe they want to go into it with what they have, and maybe it's a football superstition. Things will just get better. Like, I don't know. But the Browns have just reached new lows. I mean, you've outgained both your first two opponents and lost both games. Lost, I would say, the second one pretty damn convincingly. First one, didn't lose convincingly, but at the same time, you hold the opposing team to 7 yards. 7 yards in the second half and lose. So I would say that's a convincing 1 point loss, weirdly enough. But who knows with the Browns? We kind of talked about the Chiefs and Eagles already, and are you worried about any of them? We kind of, discussed that. I don't think we really have much cause for concern for either team. Obviously, the Chiefs aren't going to win as many one-score games, and the Eagles, similarly, they're once again. Shout out to Jalen Hurts, 9 straight years, both collegiate and pro. He has a new offensive coordinator. It takes a it takes a very special mind to be able to process that 9 different times in a row. So Jalen Hurts is gonna get the hang of things. The offense is gonna get the hang of things, and a guy who's never called plays before, and Kevin Patullo, will eventually figure out like what you're supposed to do because he's never called plays in the high school realm, the collegiate realm, or the pro level. So I don't think there should be a ton of concern for either team. Obviously, if they want to win a Super Bowl, then there's concern because they don't look how they should. But that is what it is. I want to end this episode talking about the man, the myth, the legend, Daniel freaking Jones. Joey, is he the real deal?
I think so. I'm all in on it. I've seen enough. That was a very convincing comeback win against the Broncos. I know they had a little bit of help at the end of the game, but it is what it is. But look, this is a good Colts team. They've got a really solid defense. They have fully leaned into the run game, which I think Daniel Jones really only helps. You would think that Anthony Richardson would help that, but a lot of people really slander the Colts for benching Anthony Richardson, but the fact of the matter is Shane Steichen very well could be coaching for his job. He doesn't got another year to waste with Anthony Richardson to just see if it works out. He clearly had more confidence in Daniel Jones, so I respect him a ton for making that move and going with it because not many people think very highly of Daniel Jones, but he's played really well this year. I think he's completely playing into the system, and I think he's doing his job exactly the way he needs to do. I'm all for the Danny Dimes hype this year.
I don't think anybody would have bet a singular penny that Daniel Jones and Russell Wilson would be the two leading passers in the NFL after 2 weeks. And
Absolutely
ironically,
not.
ironically for Russell Wilson, it's where Daniel Jones used to play. And for Daniel Jones, he signed a deal as a short term kind of prove it as a just in case if he got the starting job. And he did. And he's taking full advantage of it. Sorry, Anthony Richardson, you got a lot of problems that you need to figure out. And for Daniel Jones, I think he's finally in a system that like fits him. He understands Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen understands him. But additionally, he feels a little bit more protected by the run game and the O-line than he was in New York. And that was always the biggest problem with Daniel Jones, who did make the postseason in one season with the Giants. So I'm all for Daniel Jones right now. I don't know where that would be specifically, but I think what he's done is legit. I mean, the Broncos have a top 3 defense in the league, I would argue, and he just casually had 300 plus passing yards on that defense. Week 1, completely decimated the Dolphins, who really are not a football team right now, and did what he was supposed to do. But he's uh, no turnovers and no punts in each of the first 2 weeks, and there's very few moments ever in NFL history where that's ever been a thing. And for the Colts, same can be said. So I think it's more real than fluke for Daniel Jones, and I think the Colts can be a sneaky contender in the AFC if they can continue this performance from their quarterback and the way their defense is playing.
I agree, and I think they play in a weak enough division where you really can't count them out. Just kind of given everything, if Daniel Jones can sustain this, and obviously it'll be more tough as the season goes on and you get more film on him. But yeah, I just in a weak division like that, you certainly can't count them out.
100%. So, any final thoughts from you before we conclude episode 1?
It was excited to get back into it. I thought it was a good first episode. Certainly a lot of topics, but I'm kind of as we get back into it, the more we get into it, the more we'll have to talk about, and kind of the more we'll do with this.
100%. I'm excited for when we start, breaking down stuff. We're still trying to get to the point where we can incorporate that into the podcast visually, doing some X's and O's. I am all for that. I like the idea. I'm a big, just because I run doesn't mean, I'm a big football, basketball guy. Those are my first loves. So it's definitely an area I'm very passionate about, especially on the coaching side of it with, how the X's and O's are done, why they're done, what you disguises, etc. So good first episode. I'm excited to see the journey and where this thing goes and the consistency that we will continue to have for the viewers. But on that note, thank you for listening to the first episode of the Beyond the Box Score podcast. I'm Treyvon Hastings. With me is Joey Korzanowski. We're out. Have a good one.